Welcome everyone to the July 16th Affordable Housing Trust Fund meeting, 1 p.m. Looks like we have a well-attended meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order. For the first item, I'd like to get an approval of the agenda. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimously approved. Item number 3, approval of the minutes from the May 21st, June 18th, and June 25th. Is there any comment from the board on any of the minutes, or is there a motion?
Make a motion to approve. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Excellent. Item number 4, public comments. Anyone?
You know what? The only thing, and this happened before, is my name keeps
Did I
getting left
drop
off.
your name off of it?
Yeah.
Sorry, I probably keep using that one problem template.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I'll fix it.
And it's just the one. The other one, my name is on it.
Sorry, Rita.
It's okay.
Give her a call.
Yeah.
Okay, seeing no motions on, or nobody on public comment, I'll close item 4 and move to item 5. CCAP applications. We have an application for 3 Hull Lane.
Do you have the name for this one?
Yes, it is Ricky and
Ricky and Emily-
Lee and Emily
The
Millington.
million, okay. Great.
Is there anything unusual about this application?
No, they're at the 150% level because they're at 109, so they have to be bumped up for 150 for our disbursement purposes. No, aside from that, there's nothing funky with it. Gone to PNS.
I make a motion to approve up to, what do we do, 15,000 for this application?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Passes. Any opposed? Hearing none, passes unanimously. Great. The second CCAP application we have is for 22 Evergreen Way.
The applicant for this one is present.
Great. Would you like to make any comments, or? Okay. Good.
That's a lesson to you, never listen to Ken.
Right.
Let's read the notes.
On the, maybe I'm misreading, but on the settlement, there's transfer taxes. That's not land bank, is it?
That is land bank, which traditionally
Shouldn't be there.
shouldn't be listed, and so it will be removed up to a certain amount. I'm confused at the percentage this is. Is this an 80? It's 80 is circled, but it looks like the value is higher.
So I have the email, but Housing Nantucket qualified them at under the 80%
Okay.
marker. This particular lot is still, it's been approved at the planning board as a covenant lot. They're just pending paperwork, so decision, filing. Last I heard, and you can speak to this, did Beverly pick up the proper applications to be put into the covenant program? Okay, so there's some loose paperwork ends that need to happen prior to the closing that both attorneys are well aware of.
Will the covenant be at 150 or at 80?
That's my confusion too.
Oh, okay.
Covenant, it's always
One.
saying half.
Okay,
150.
all right.
When we say they're below 80, we're finding that that's his income level. I understand that's how your funding works, so that's the pool that they fit.
Okay.
Okay, so I guess that's my question: is
Okay.
where are we going to take the money from on this? Is it a 150? So it's coming from one pool, or is it an 80 that can come from CPC?
It's an 80 from CPC.
Well, but if the restriction on the property is at the higher level, I believe that we're gonna need to take it from that.
From the CPC?
Yeah. No,
Oh, not
from the
from the CPC,
150.
from the non-CPC.
Yeah,
Right.
non-CPC.
So I think that,
Right.
because,
Okay.
I think, yes, the covenant leads where, what we do.
Exactly.
right. I just want to make sure that that's clear in the application where we're moving towards.
Okay.
Cool.
I think that might have to be another larger conversation for another meeting to go back and look at other applications, because historically, that's not how it's been tracked.
So historically, it's.
It
where
goes
money's
with the
coming is dependent on
applicant,
the applicant as
not
opposed
with
to
the covenant.
That was my understanding, is that if they're at
Okay.
80% regardless
'cause
of
it's
the cost
income
of the
based.
house, yeah. And that the covenant, again, has that sort of capped rate as opposed to some of the other ones like Sagem's Path that had the fluctuating. So, yeah, my understanding was that it went with the applicant in terms of the source of funding and their designation at 80% as opposed to the house.
Okay.
Well, Ken, from the CPC standpoint, because that's really the determiner here. It can be by the applicant, not necessarily the property restriction. Okay.
Good to know.
Yeah, if you're good with that, that's great.
Well, if that's the case, then it's great that this is an 80% because we'd rather take the money from the CPC pool.
Right. Okay.
Okay, so I'm gonna move to approve up to $15,000 of closing cost assistance pending the clarification, the finalization of the covenant on the property prior to closing, and only for the actual closing costs.
Hearing a second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries unanimously.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Okay.
How did we get to this so fast? I was only a few minutes late.
You were only a couple minutes late.
Brian's
It's a
on a-
beautiful
Brian's
day
got some
outside.
string bass.
Yeah, there's a lot of things to cut.
Don't slow us down now.
Yeah. Item number 7, we're looking for an update on the covenant lot that's being created at 47 Fairgrounds. I guess kind of where it's at in Land Court, or
So,
Aren't we at,
yeah,
Sorry.
we're not, I don't
Do
think
you,
we're at
do
7
you have an
yet.
update on that?
oh,
Rachel?
6. Excuse me. I'm sorry.
I don't have an update, I'm still trying to find a time to meet.
so yeah, basically it's at land court. It's at a juncture where it requires a signature from the owner, the present owner, and she has not been easy to work with. And she reached out to Rita to say, maybe express some concerns that she had about communications with Linda and other things. So Rita and Dawn having the complete history with this person, are trying to get together with her.
Great.
Yeah.
So we're just looking for a time that works for everyone. Right now, we're looking at Friday this week.
Oh, soon.
So for an understanding, for me, as we go through covenant lot creation, they all don't need to go to Land Court.
Correct.
Only,
It depends on the parcel.
yeah, whether it's recorded or registered.
right.
So I guess the question is, part of this process is lengthier because of the parties involved, not just the process, is my kind of question, because we're on
That's like a good
3
general
years on this?
statement.
Yeah, the party involved here has not been the most cooperative. Yeah, even though they're required to be cooperative. Yeah.
Okay, I just think that that's an important thing to be thinking about as we look to create more covenant lots and what our timing and process is. Yeah, Rita?
I'm just wondering if this was this paperwork that we could have had signed earlier before we were more helpful? Or?
I mean, this is kind of before my time, so I don't know yeah.
I think this is how can we do it better?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
let's make it as we go forward and trying to create a program. This is a great example of where mistakes may have happened. How do we do it better?
Right.
So something to be cognizant of. Ken?
You should just be aware that anything that you do.
Ken, we need you in a microphone, please.
Ken Bogrand, real estate specialist. You just should be aware that anything that you do that involves the land court is going to take a lot longer than the problem with the registry. Eleanor and Andrew and I are meeting with Arthur Reed tomorrow to see what we can do to try to expedite the process, because you've had the chief engineer and the chief title examiner retiring recently. So you have a problem with respect to a blockage in terms of the chain of moving documents through. And so what we're trying to do is figure out a way to be able to open up the communications flow and the flow of documents through, because it's not only affecting these, it's affecting anything that the town is involved with that in fact involves the land court.
A quick question through Brian.
Yeah, Penny.
Do you think there's any merit to speaking to our representatives in the general court about this?
Well, I mean, Tucker and I are going to be seeing him on Thursday. We'll raise that issue with him as well.
You're gonna see
But,
Dylan and-
but it's not. But the issue is really with the mechanics of the people in the land court itself.
But it could be a staffing issue, it could be an administrative issue. I just know that they've been.
It's been an issue that's been
helpful
going for
when
a
there are
long, long time.
Log jams
Yeah,
to help
yeah,
unravel things.
yeah. So
Just a thought.
anyway.
Thank you.
Great, thank you, Ken.
Actually,
Yes,
why
sir.
is this property in land court? What is it about this property that triggers land court?
Change of title.
Change of title? And so, but we don't run into that on every property?
Not every property is we have registered properties and unregistered. And land court applies a whole different set of standards
To anything that is registered.
that is registered.
And why are some
The nature of the
registered?
title. It's the highest form of title. And if property is land courted and there's an alteration to it, it has to be validated and confirmed by the land court.
So at some point in time, you may want to take a unregistered piece of land through the land court process, clean the title, set the boundaries, go through the effort. And that could be at a subdivision, it could be at something. And so from that point forward, it has to go through that process.
Start now if you want to do it while you're still walking.
And issues that happen or things that come up that go to land court, a general timeline, maybe 12 to 18 months
Yeah, that's
for something to go through and happen. This situation we've been working on, I think this will.
2
even longer. I
years,
think this
yeah.
came on when I came on the board originally, this was a conversation that was
a
just
long time.
happening. So we're a handful of years into this process. But there's no, 20 years ago, maybe 50% of the properties went to land court, but now it's probably a little higher than that as far as the numbers. People want to clean and perfect the legalese of their property.
One other thing, if I could add to that, so much of our business is deadline driven, and things get done better when there are hard and fast deadlines with financial ramifications.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And you need good lawyers.
In terms of drafting contracts with
And,
people having.
Yeah, if you talk to any of sort of the most active lawyers here, a lot of them are going up to land court weekly they physically go there with their stuff to get it done.
So when you have a clean and clear title that's registered, things move more quickly once you have that?
Not necessarily. How do I explain it? I was really making the point about deadlines.
Okay.
It sounds like our situation on Fairgrounds hasn't had deadlines that have
Yeah, I mean,
ramifications.
yeah, again, it predates my involvement with any of this, but I would say probably that's true.
That's correct. Yeah, that's correct.
Deadlines with financial impacts.
With
make
yeah,
people perform
exactly,
faster.
exactly. Well, and I think that, again, Dawn knows the history because she was there at the beginning, but I think there had been at the time, the party, I think, was sort of quite grateful about this all being able to be facilitated, but now hasn't necessarily demonstrated that gratitude with acting quickly. So,
In as far as the local opportunity that we have, Arthur Reed, the attorney you mentioned, is considered one of the most experienced and knowledgeable in land court, and he wrote our zoning book. So we're fortunate that he's a resource for us here in this community. So he's kind of the land court go-to guy for a lot of people.
So for instance, if we were to get into a covenant lot creation program, if we set a deadline with a consequence that any funding had to be returned by said deadline, then there would be pressure on everyone to meet that deadline, and the court probably respects it more because there's financial consequences to not
Yeah,
meeting the deadline.
We can't speak for the court, but
Yeah.
It may motivate the lawyer to carry the documents there to stand
Okay,
in front of
got
the
it.
court.
Okay. Okay. Good to know.
Okay, so we'll carry the 47 Fairgrounds on to a future agenda for more of an update. Item number 7 now, we will do discussion of the draft down payment assistance program, and I'll look to Tucker to kind of lead that, or?
We will not do discussion of that.
Okay,
No, this is, yeah, this is the item that Housing Nantucket has been working on a proposal around covenant lot creation, as we have talked about at prior meetings. And we will be taking this up at the August meeting.
and so that'll be a 2-part agenda item. The
Yeah.
first part will be covenant lot creation program, and then the second part will be a
Down payment that would
assistance.
support that covenant lot creation.
Great,
Yeah,
excellent.
Tie them in.
yeah, in a way they're connected.
That's, I
Yeah.
like that.
So, and yes, and August 13th, just to get it on the public record, is the next meeting, same time in this room.
Great.
Oh, August 13th.
It's a Tuesday?
That's right, we moved it forward.
Yeah, we all of our meetings going forward will be in the afternoon, afternoons on Tuesdays, or what we, I think, seem to work best for everyone.
But the August one is just different in that it's the second.
Yeah, we moved it up a week just with timing of folks being away and so forth. Yeah.
Are we still doing a workshop?
We do not have a set date yet. It probably will be a fall activity. Yeah.
Okay, so Megan, you got that 2-part agenda item for the next meeting. Item number 8, Neighborhood First Advisory Committee update. So we have a working document here, I think.
Yeah, so there's an updated version of, I think what we were kind of referring to as the charging document that you all had seen previously. This basically, now that the committee has largely been set, the FinCom representative has not been determined yet by the FinCom, but you can see, the committee makeup, staff support, contact information. Then we included some background for the committee members and kind of expanded upon the goals a bit as they embark on their work. We have secured this meeting space here for their future meetings and are suggesting, it seems like Mondays are a good day for the committee. Some members are seasonal, but they happen to come over long weekends and so forth. So this is what we have suggested to them. They, of course, will discuss that at their first meeting, which is coming up on July 29th, a Monday, again, from 1 to 3 in this room. We're planning to have those meetings taped. They are public meetings. Anyone is invited to be here and contribute. And I think we're just going to make a practice of posting those meetings for the trust because we have 3 folks who are serving on the committee in different capacities, Penny and Brooke for the trust, and Dave actually is the NP and EDC representative to that committee. So we will post those and everyone is welcome to attend. And I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, but there was some indication from the people who were not appointed that they want to be kept apart.
Yes, and we've already made them aware of the first meeting and invited them, please, to contribute their ideas, and we welcome their input.
Thank you.
Yep.
Just as a point of order, then one of us is gonna have to open a trust meeting and adjourn a trust meeting at each,
If we have a quorum,
if
yeah.
we have a quorum.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And so really this is, largely similar information to what was in the prior document, just with a little more narrative on the front end in terms of background and so forth. So if there are any comments or additions or things that folks want to talk about with respect to this, otherwise we'll plan to send this out as part of the package that will go to the committee.
I have a question, of course, sorry.
No, please.
Are we gonna have an agenda?
For the meeting?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, of course.
Good, are we gonna get it ahead of time? Thank you.
Well, you're gonna get it with this, and you're gonna get quite a bit of information, actually, which also we will send to the trust members, just because I think it will be useful to everybody. But in terms of mapping of town lands, things that are in the pipeline, the shy management list that we've looked at here, and the agenda will largely sort of follow the outline that is included in this document. Yeah.
Just another question to follow up on what Brooke was saying about convening and adjourning a meeting. What is a quorum? Isn't it like 6 of us?
Four.
Oh, it's 4 of us.
Four of us.
So
Yeah,
if it's Brooke, myself, and Dave,
so one more is a quorum.
okay, so we don't have to do it unless there are 4 of us.
So the first meeting, I will be there, so we'll do it.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
The
you see
second
what he was
meeting,
trying to
we'll-
do? Okay,
yeah.
cool.
Yeah, and I would.
Yeah.
We just need to be aware of it.
Good,
Help each other
In the
remain
room.
aware of it.
got it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Tucker, will you be sending the group the housing production plan? Is there any outline from the Board of Selectmen's goals and objectives that they set that we want to pass on?
We definitely can send them the housing production plan for sure, as well as the board strategic plan. Is the board updated the plan with the new goals? Not
No,
yet.
They probably will be by the time of the first meeting,
Okay.
because we have a workshop on the 31st of July. So I think that's the final,
The final session.
yeah,
Okay.
to approve the final.
Yeah. So all right. Yeah. So it'll come after the first meeting, but that's
I think that that's a important thing to convey to
Yep.
the people who are non-residents.
As well as our strategic.
Yeah.
Also, it's okay if it's after the first meeting, because we don't want to overwhelm these people so much that they run.
These are studied people.
That's
I
true.
have-
Yeah, yeah,
I think
yeah,
that
yeah.
Information is good.
Point.
I think
Also, the links to the handbook and the, you know,
the trust
yeah, how affordable trusts work.
Okay.
There are 2. There's a handbook and a manual, and I included the links in the email when I was doing
Yes, that was helpful.
a newcomers
Yep.
prep. That gives everybody an idea of what we can and cannot do.
Right. And then we also will be including in the package the legal opinions regarding the latitude of the use of the money.
I want that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great.
Is there any update for the FinCon rep, who that might be? It says TBD.
Yeah, no, they haven't officially appointed someone. I had seen David Worth recently. He said it will probably not be him, just with a full plate. But a couple of members had expressed interest, but they had yet to meet and appoint someone.
Okay, great. Any continued discussion? Hearing none, look forward to that meeting. Thank you, Tucker. Item number 9, budget discussion.
Yeah, so in front of you should be, this is a slightly updated version of what you all had seen at the last meeting in terms of the different buckets of funds that the trust presently has, and how you previously have either spoken about utilizing funds, or in the case of, if you go down the left-hand side under programs, it says land acquisition committed. That is the commitment you all made with regard to a particular land acquisition, which is has not closed yet, so we won't discuss it at the moment in detail. But those funds are how the trust had voted to fund that project. So I think the town administration and the finance department generally get rolling in August with their budgeting for the following fiscal year. And so what we were hoping to do today is begin a discussion of the things that we want to be including in our upcoming funding request / budget as town admin and finance begin their work on the overall budgeting for the town. I think some things, the hope is to get some things on the table today. Maybe there can be a small group of folks between now and the August meeting that get together and refine that further, such that at the August meeting, we really would be in a position to be making a recommendation or request to town administration, get something, on the table as the budget discussions begin. And I think you all recall the trust had voted previously to make a request of the select board to think about using the potential revenue that would come in under the short-term rental tax, allocating a certain percentage, toward housing activities. Brian Turbot, the finance director, has come back and said it may be a little challenging to do it that way because the way of how things are structured, it sort of goes into the general fund, so that a better approach really would be, what do we need, and then let him figure out about how that gets funded. So that's really what we want to try to do between now and the August meeting, at least as a first placeholder in the whole budgetary discussion process. And I guess the last thing I'll point out, and then turn it over to the members to discuss, is that if you look at the so I think some people may initially think about, well, the trust has over $25 million available to it. We have all kinds of money to do all kinds of things. But the monies that have been appropriated have very specific purposes. So as we know, the Neighborhood First program, the 20 million, is really about acquisition of property. It cannot be used for operations. It cannot be used for closing cost assistance or other similar programs that the trust has underway. It may be able to be used in more creative ways. Again, we're going to get the legal opinion about the latitude of its use, but generally speaking, I think we should be thinking about that as an acquisition fund. Similarly, the $5 million appropriated by the CPC was intended toward that type of thing as well, that it was for acquisitions of properties that could be utilized for year-round housing. There is the general CPC funding that can be used with a little greater latitude, as we know, funding of CAP program, et cetera. But in terms of our more or less unrestricted funds, we, following the commitment of the monies towards this acquisition I recently referenced, we have roughly $94,000 left in the $1 select board approval bucket. And then we have presently roughly $750,000 under the 100,000 select board approval bucket. Those are really the two most unrestricted buckets of funding that you all have. And those are the places that you would go to for closing cost assistance for 150 AMI or down payment assistance for 150 AMI. So there obviously are some significant funds available, but they have limitations.
So I think for me, in looking at this, is where are the things that we need to break down as far as needs, right? There's a movement towards staffing. As we have all of this funding, what are we looking at for staff opportunities, and how does administration want to handle that through funding themselves or through us? There are a couple of ongoing things that we have requests for grants out that we should probably consider putting into these items, whether it's the Grant Sanders and the data project reoccurring maintenance if we don't get awarded those grants. Any additional marketing expenses that we want to take on. We're gonna need support for the committee through its process. And execution of the $20 million spend, because that's on land, not on the support to spend it. Those are just a couple of my rough.
Didn't it say existing properties? You said land, I mean, didn't it?
So I think the breadth of the way the article was written is it could be existing land to be developed or existing units.
It could be improved property or unimproved property.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
We talked about it when we were discussing the CHIP application, but looking at the closing cost assistance program being incorporated into our sort of running costs. Is that the time to start? And we had talked about that coming out of the short-term rental tax.
Yeah.
So I would like to have that conversation with Ryan.
So I guess the question is how much, and with that, is there, what other reoccurring kind of programmatic expenses do we want to look at, right? If we're going to be doing down payment assistance for 150% covenants, this is the only place that we're going to have reoccurring money to budget, right? Because it's going to be over CPC opportunities. So whether it's covenant lot creation or covenant lot down payment, and I say lot, I do mean house.
Yeah,
That may
and
be
closing
one.
cost at 150%.
Right.
Or
Is that outside of what we have budgeted for future program development? Is that just the actual programs themselves? It's the last line
Yeah.
under uses.
So I think for this fiscal year, that's what we anticipated.
Okay, yeah.
But going forward, like what are our needs for CCAP? What do we anticipate for down payment assistance? What do we anticipate for covenant lot creation? And then, putting numbers to all of those things to come up with an annual, and then we can think about, I think we should look at everything and then look at what subsets of that we could request from the CPC, what can't be requested, what exceeds the CPC's AMI limit. And then also, I mean, we also are being seen as the centralized source for funding for habitat grants and Housing Nantucket House Move grants. Those should be in there, as well as ongoing maintenance of our data projects, whether that's the one we have contracted already and or the one we're proposing, the housing hub project that we have the CHIP grant. And then I think to what Brian said, if we don't get the CHIP grant, do we want to throw that in the 2021 budget, the creation of it, as a proposal for that fiscal year, as an expense of the trust?
And so just to clarify that Habitat is funding that could be CPC money that goes to Habitat because of the level they serve. Housing Nantucket House Move, if it's going into their rental program at 100% or less, that could be CPC money that's used. But if it's a covenant, it's got to be new source of funds. And so I just wanted to also highlight that, so let's just say you roughly have 850,000 left in unrestricted or least restricted monies. If you take an opportunity that comes along, and I'm just going to use a number as an example, but if it's a $3 million land acquisition type of scale of project, if you're using all CPC money for something like that, then it's got to all be restricted at 100% or less. So if you want to use a portion, you want a portion of that to serve a higher level, you're going to need money that is less restricted to do that. So right now you would have, again, roughly 850,000 toward that type of thing.
And I think that's an important thing to note, because in recent meetings, more so than in the past, we've looked at many more opportunities, and we will have an executive session today. So it's important to know that we have bandwidth to be able to spend that.
Right.
I have a question. under the CHIP grant funding, we've reported to them that we've spent these funds already.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just confused that they're not in the,
Oh, I'm sorry.
used.
Further down.
They are in the
Yeah.
budget.
because I see 50 out of the $1.
Yes, you're correct. So I should have mentioned at the beginning, we've been trying to connect with the new treasurer in Brian Turbott's office to really go through the financial reporting that we get, as the trust, and ideally actually to see if there isn't an opportunity in the Munis system to separate out the different buckets and how things are accounted for, because right now it's sort of all one bucket. And anyway, Brian had been onboarding the new treasurer. It's obviously year end for the town, so it's been a hectic period. But between now and the next meeting, we will for sure have an opportunity to meet with them and discuss that further. So we will have a clean report for the next
Okay,
meeting. Yeah.
great.
Thank you for pointing that out, though.
Thanks.
One other thing I want to say is that we have to remember that when we look toward our CPC application for this year, that the CPC has already committed future revenues for the bonding. So they will likely be taking that commitment into account in their overall allocation of their funds. So that we may not have, they very generously gave us $750,000 this year and then committed future revenues to covering the cost of that borrowing. So I would expect that the net result of what we might get from them would be less than $750 going forward. But Mr. Bogrant's here, so.
Ken Bogrant on behalf of the CPC. I'm not going to comment with respect to what the board can do because, in fact, we haven't received any applications. The comment that I did want to make is you are correct in the sense that we have committed $250,000 a year to cover the cost of the funding of the principal and interest on the $5 million bond. But what is also needs to be very clear is that last year the representation was made that, and this was impacted the decision that we made relative to Habitat and Housing Nantucket funding, was that the funding that would go to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, it would be the clearinghouse with respect to the allocation of those funds, because in fact, the Affordable Housing Trust Fund had their finger on the pulse of where the money was best needed in terms of how to allocate that. So there needs to be clarity between you and the other two applicants relative to the arrangement with respect to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund and where the funds, if there's not to be any monies from the Affordable Housing Trust Fund to go to either of those organizations, that needs to be clear in terms of the application so that when we're taking a look at all of the different housing needs within the island, that we make a decision in terms of, in our judgment, as opposed to this year, we left it to your judgment, where the most critical need was and where the money could be most effectively expended.
Thank you, Ken.
Thanks.
So Tucker, to move this forward, how would you envision, do you want to come back with kind of a line item with some estimations to August? Are there line items that we haven't discussed that individual board members want to see for that opportunity? Or?
I think it would be good. I think it would be helpful to get together, like for me to get together maybe with Brooke or Rima, who are involved with the data platform, and Grant, and sort of look, so it can get all sides of both. I mean, I know what the current proposal is, but the ongoing expenses, and would welcome input from any member on the things that we want to include here. I'm going to be talking to Libby, I expect in the next 2 weeks, about how does she want to view staffing, and where does that fall? And I mean, historically, I think it would fall under town administration or the planning department, personnel expenses and so forth. But I'd like to get a little better definition from her.
Clarification on that,
Yeah, like we're really moving toward a housing office. So I think that will be instructive.
Great.
Yep.
Okay. Any more commentary? So we'll have that as an agenda item, Megan, for the August meeting and carry that over. Item number 10, expense approvals.
So you have just a simple one-page statement in the packet there, or simple paragraph statement. We've talked about a routine expense policy. So Megan and I were able to confer further with Andrew. We've kind of picked up language from the NP and EDC bylaws as far as kind of having a standing authorization for me to approve expenses that would be obviously trust related in the normal course, in accordance with town expense policy and so forth, so that we can not get like too cumbersome in taking advantage of different things that come up, but in between meetings that are time sensitive and really are things that we ultimately end up doing anyway. Like, so an example would be, we got, I think, 5 days notice that a testifying team was needed for the housing bank bill. And I think this year in particular it was a very timely, impactful opportunity. So there are other things, but like that's a recent example of something that, we're not going to call a special meeting to, approve, but you want it to be, streamlined as well. So
I think there were some examples with appraisals
that have come up recently.
Consultancy fees,
Yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah, they're all sort of, again, routine things. And we may, with following the conversation with Libby and Brian and the new treasurer, where there may be further refinements that we want to, add on to in the future. But, this is, again, just trying to get something, simple done, so that not like, caught up on like,
running around the details.
Yeah.
I'm just curious how we came up with the 10,000, not 5,000 or 7,500 or.
That is the figure that Andrew is doing with the NP and EDC. So
It's basically the max number before you have to go out to RFP for certain things.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
take it to the edge. And
Statutory, thank you.
my only comment on this is to make sure that we include a line item in the 21 that would incorporate these kind of expenses.
Yeah.
If we can look in arrears and see what they were.
Yep.
Over the recent past, the group a larger portion of the group has participated in travel
Right.
related courses, events, and
And you're not staying at the Ritz.
but we've also been interacting with more consultants on various things, so
Yeah.
making sure that we have a line item that'll incorporate that. But so for this, we're looking for a vote today to authorize staff on ordinary operating expenses up to $10,000 in between meetings.
Right, and this would be retroactive, like to precisely like the testimony trip and so forth. So
Great. I'd be looking for a motion.
I'll make that motion, but do you need it retroactive to a date certain?
say June 1st.
June 1st.
Yeah.
Make the motion.
Great. We have a motion
Second.
and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Hearing none opposed, passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Item 11, board comments.
I have one more thing under expense, if that's okay. Just
Yeah.
a quick note. I know you guys had asked me to look into iPads, and there really was no discount per se. So if you just go on Apple's website, that's the pricing you're dealing with. If you want to have cellular service, it'll be $40 a month per iPad. So I don't know if you want to individually look into that further, but that's the quotes you're dealing with.
And I can add, you can avoid the $40 a month if you have your cell phone with you and you use a hotspot.
yeah.
It's $15 a month.
Or just do Wi-Fi and it's the
Right.
cost of the iPad.
And our goal for this is to eliminate the paper and be more
Mm-hmm.
conservative. Okay.
So.
I'll open that up to the board for conversation.
I think there's, just even having the, like, for the select board, our entire agenda packet is available online. And so I can use the computer, I can use my own iPad, or there is a town iPad. It's really beat up, it's the old.
Yeah, IT told me you are in need of a new one.
I would agree with them, however, I hate change. So I don't know that we need to get iPads for ourselves, but I do think having digital packets would be very helpful.
I'd like to make that as a first step recommendation
Yeah,
and ask people to bring their own resource if they have it.
yeah,
And then we can kind of downsize potentially the packet based on use rather than spend the money.
and then there are some things, like I find with the board packet, there are some things that are really helpful to have printed out. And then we just do it double-sided, but it's not everything. So it's kind of having it digital first. If there's anything that needs to be printed out, it can be printed out. But yeah. And there's some digital repository that I go to get to, so I don't know if the Affordable Housing Trust could have their own spot in the cloud. I don't understand where it is. But.
That's a good idea. Yeah.
All right, so we'll look for an update next meeting on how the Board of Selectmen manages that paperwork digitally and bring your devices.
But if you had the digital file, like, does everyone have currently a way to easily, access it here?
I could, laptop.
Laptop, iPad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd bring a Chromebook or iPhone type thing. Yes.
Little bit guidance. What I do with other boards is I post a packet on the, in this case, HGF website, which maybe certainly doesn't have to do. And then I email my board saying, well, if you need a hard copy, let me know, I'll print it.
Yep.
If you don't get back to me by 24 hours per meeting, I'm not gonna do that, you're on your own. That way I don't print unnecessary packets, so it works pretty well with boards I deal with, they're used to that format. And then they can go, if you have a device that works, you can go to the HGF web, which is what you're doing for select board.
Yeah.
They also project up there, so
Yeah.
that's behind you.
Yeah.
But if you have your own device that has, and Wi-Fi there is pretty good.
Yeah, and I've always been able to use it, so I have it on my iPad and then it's projected there. So yeah, I think that sounds like a good. If there's anyone that needs it printed off, then they would let you know.
Sometimes it's nice as you can zoom in if you have difficulty seeing it. I mean, I'm like ODP.
The other thing is, you could download it if it's a PDF
Right.
onto your device, so you're not reliant on a signal.
You always
while you're
have
looking.
it to reference back.
Yeah.
I mean, you probably have to run into this. You don't download it into wherever your cloud. If you're just feeding offline, the iPad doesn't have the bandwidth to take a 800-page packet. So it'll start skipping out and being weird. So you need to download it into your cloud and then deal with it.
That's why I send it as a link, as you know.
Yeah.
They're often too big for most people's servers to, if it's, above 15 megabytes or something, most people can't handle it. So I always send a link to the packet posting. That way you can then download it, but you don't have to worry about opening it through email, which is, can be very
It
challenging.
can be a nightmare, yeah. If you want to download it in your cloud, whatever you use,
Or
cloud,
iBooks.
or, yeah,
Mine
Or
downloads
the
it
Russia would be.
or iBooks, whatever, and then you
Laughing
can.
Right. But hardware-wise, I guess it sounds like everyone is equipped.
Let's plug through it for 3 months, and then if
Okay.
we need a device,
And then,
or if
yes,
somebody's
'cause
struggling with
somebody
their
may
own
have
device,
a-
Yeah.
Secondary one, like I might have an iPad that I could
Right.
offer up.
and I may want a printed copy.
Yeah.
I might be that guy. I might be that guy. Yeah, I might be that guy.
Planet killer, you know?
Yeah. You're probably gonna start bringing plastic straws.
Yeah.
Paper straws and plastic bottles. That's what I'll be doing.
I'm gonna laminate everything.
I love that sticker. Okay, on to item 11, board comments.
Mr. Chairman, may I?
Yes, Brooke, please.
So I have been, when we went to the Housing Institute, I met a group of people from the Community Development Partnership on the Cape. They are, they do a lot of things, including economic development, but housing is part of, they own and manage housing, similar to Housing Nantucket. And they asked if they could come learn all about the things that we're accomplishing on Nantucket, which made me really happy. And they are coming to our August 13th meeting. The plan is to take them on a tour of the housing hits of Nantucket. And I wanted to invite everybody to join us on that. I was thinking it would be a smaller group, but I thought we could rent a van and do, and not the van with the pole, just a regular old van. I've been on a housing tour in that other van. So I wanted, an invitation will be forthcoming. We're also planning a lunch at the Chamber of Commerce with other folks who are involved in housing on Nantucket for them to meet and brainstorm, and then they'll attend our meeting. And then it's also the day of the Nantucket Data Platforms 2019 presentation, so they're going to attend that. And probably anyone who wants to, they've agreed that it would be fun to stay through dinner and chat some more and then leave after an early dinner. So we will post any parts of it as meetings, as an open meeting for anyone who wants to attend. So there'll be 3 representatives from the Cape.
Nantucket Lighthouse School has a band that might be available
Oh,
this
yeah.
summer.
It's a great idea.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, cool. Megan and I are working on the details of that, but we're going to do a bring in food to the chamber and have a roundtable luncheon in their big conference room. So I'm really excited about it. They're really excited about it. So.
Might be fun to go to Jetty's for dinner.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So that's all.
Great. You reminded me actually, I think I texted it to you, it was random, but I heard it on NPR, they were advertising an organization on the Cape, Rent 360. It was a program that they're doing to encourage people to rent year-round, and they are offering cash, I think 2,000 to 3,000 per thing, and I didn't have a chance to look it up, and I didn't know if you'd heard of it, so I just thought of you to text it to, but again, just kind of keeping that one in mind, and I don't know if that's the same organization, but it would be helpful.
I think it's Hack.
Rent
It's
360.
Housing
Yes.
Systems Corporation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's that?
It's Hack.
Housing
it is
Systems
Yeah, yeah.
Corporation.
Yeah. So I don't know if that, just when we had been talking about ways to incentivize people to rent year-round, and someone had reached out to me, and then we had talked about this at prior board meetings, where someone had
somebody-
reached out to me and said, I just did the math and realized it's actually better for me to rent year-round.
And
So,
less hassle.
I had somebody recently walk into my office who was a vacation homeowner renter
Yeah.
who said that they were going to do it, and it's too bad there wasn't an incentive program
yeah.
So,
just recently.
and I think down the line, we need to bring it to the select board and possibly town meeting, some sort of property tax break credit.
So there's been
Something.
minor investigation on that, going to the assessor's office, myself, to talk about that. And it's a legislative act we need at
So
the State House.
yet another home rule petition.
Exactly.
Which is where
But-
some sort of funding, at least initially, to show that, $2,000, whatever it is, does it, and that maybe becomes one of our programs.
Yeah, maybe
initially, so we don't have
maybe
to-
for next meeting, we can have a review of HAC's program before the budget conversation. And if it's
Good idea.
worth
Yeah.
plugging in as a line item for the 21 budget
Yeah,
for a
Well,
pilot program.
yeah.
Just pilot program is the way to do it. One thing this sort of raises for me is the notion of if the town or a town agency is getting into the business of financial remuneration for somebody renting on a year-round basis, there are going to be standards for renting on a year-round basis.
Right.
And there are going to be inspections and safety requirements and fire and, And I know we're not there yet.
Housing.
Which was a conversation that Judith was moving towards in her
Yes,
warrant
I know,
article, and getting
yeah.
a registration system set up and in place.
Just to make, just to make sure it's actually fair and being done.
Right.
And I think that's why, again, looking at the hack program,
Yes,
seeing how they're
great
doing
idea.
it.
Yeah.
And I think it's a once-off. So I think that, if it was every year we were paying them, an additional $2,000 or $3,000, I could see that definitely triggering some sort of ongoing inspection or whatever it is. But
Criteria.
yeah, and I think also maybe making too many assumptions, but some of these we're trying to move out of seasonal, which probably meet a certain standard, into year-round. So hopefully a lot of the properties that would be out there would be already higher quality.
So I would say that being a landlord of a rental apartment, the egress, this two egresses, there's a lot of building code requirements that may or may not be present in a lot of existing rentals on Nantucket. So I love the idea. The tax break probably isn't worth it. Our taxes are so low here that it's probably not worth the effort. In Vermont, where your taxes are 5 times what they are here, giving someone a $2,000 or $3,000 break on their taxes, it would be 100% of my taxes. So it wouldn't. I don't think it's.
What if it was a big fat tax break? What if it's $50,000 a year?
But a tax break is only good if your tax bill's that. Our taxes are so low. To rebate against a low
I'm just talking
tax.
about reapportioning. We have a residential exemption,
Yeah.
which is what, how much, 300 and some thousand now?
I think it's.
372?
I
Something
think it's
like
a little
that.
more than that.
It's up there.
Yeah.
So
I wanna say
increase.
it's almost
So
500.
maybe there's a way to go about it. But again,
I just think we need to explore it.
absolutely.
And there has to be criteria
Yeah.
because of, the liability issue as
Yeah.
an owner. I mean, that's something that concerns me a great deal. The number of people that are renting not only substandard housing, but dangerous housing. I mean, I know this has been an ongoing issue with the health department too, but.
And something else that we had talked about briefly was the possibility, and this is part of this is some sort of pilot program, maybe through some of these surveys the
Yeah.
data platform is doing for us, is understanding, are there people that maybe need an extra egress and it's gonna cost X amount, and if we are able to help them with some of those, getting it rent ready.
Bigger window. Yeah.
Something like that, bringing some of these up to code,
Yeah.
maybe that's where the money is better spent,
Yep.
so.
A
and
part of this comes back to the whole creation of the tertiary zoning regulation to allow those units to become dwellings, which is an increase in value for those owners. So a lot of that groundwork had been laid already, and that does have the year-round rental restriction on it. So
And-
how do we
Yeah.
create that opportunity in getting people to convert the units into tertiaries?
Yeah, guest houses into actual.
It's
Rental
basically
units.
basement apartments and garage apartments, and how do you convert those into tertiary dwellings and get an actual dwelling unit, which
Right.
raises your assessment, but how do you get the tax break on the assessment if you have a dwelling that's rented year round?
Yeah, lots of good.
And a calculator maybe would be on our website. So if you are renting seasonally, and plug in some numbers and be able to quickly compare your expenses and income year-round versus seasonal.
And I will say, a number of my clients, our clients, because of the hassle now with the short-term rentals, have opted to do the longer-term rentals. Now, not necessarily year-round, but seasonal in a bunch of cases. And I think, it's like New York City. You don't bring a car to New York City because it's too difficult. If it's too hard, it'll push people to different behavior.
Right.
possibly.
That was
Yeah.
our hope.
So
Right.
I guess as a subsection of the hack review conversation, maybe we want to move towards a second item next week as far as a marketing opportunity, which we've talked about in the past, Rita, of how do we educate people on the value of doing a year-round rental. If we just educate them on that versus, how do we take the headaches away? And not even going towards dollar value,
Make it
but
clear what the
the
options
time,
are.
the
Yeah.
time value in that.
Choices, everybody has,
And I think the other thing that the hack program does is it gives the landlord or the owner access to information like how to draft a lease, what you want in the lease, how to find tenants, what criteria you want to set, all of that. So they're giving advice.
legal resources too.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the big things for the public out there. They have a belief system that year-round tenants won't be great tenants. So how do we offer them the resources to find qualified tenants that they can do whatever they need to, job checks, credit checks, Yeah, yeah.
all of the above.
Any other new other business to discuss? Hearing none, we'll close that. I'm going to ask to be led through this process one more time. I'll be looking for a motion to.
Wait.
So do you have something else before we?
I did.
It'll come back to you.
It'll
if we
come-
just keep chatting.
Oh, I know what it is. It was kind of on the topic of guests and so forth. We talked briefly at a prior meeting about a speaker who was at the Housing Institute this year, kind of a national speaker, Dr. Tiffany Manuel, who runs a company called the Case Made, and she was the keynote at the Housing Institute this year, and we had given some brief discussion to the idea of possibly having this person come to Nantucket, and so I wanted to see if this is something we want to explore further and potentially, understand exactly like what may be involved financially and so forth with this person. I have no idea whatsoever, but if it's of further interest to the group, I can put together kind of a little package around what she does, the benefit she may bring to this group. There may be other organizations that want to partner in bringing her here. Again, I have no idea whatsoever what expense is associated with it, but that it's something you all could consider at your next meeting.
Is the premise education?
Yeah, she's a social scientist. She got her doctorate at UMass Boston, and she is based in Chicago, but she is, I'm going to say, an expert at turning the conversation around complex, difficult to get done decisions, like kind of on its head in a way that gets traction.
Would it be worth thinking about if we're doing some sort of a retreat or something like that?
Well,
to maybe facilitate?
yeah, that's sort of related to the workshop. Maybe it would be tied in with that. So again, there's not a specific program yet. I just kind of wanted to get a sense of the board today. No commitments whatsoever, but just, is it something that we want to explore further? And then I could get for the next meeting, we could have more to discuss around it. If it was something we even want to. Yeah, this would be like a fall sort of a thing, or winter.
My
Perhaps.
thought would be something near the subcommittee's third meeting schedule
Okay.
to potentially help any barriers that they're coming up against.
Yeah.
And kind of somebody to help kind of re-energize, push that through in conjunction with maybe a follow-up day with us or continued. So how do we get the best, bang for the buck?
Yep.
And, if there's an overnight, 2 groups, or as you said, a partner up, but how do we, once they get to the place where they know their problems and where they're hitting it, how do we kind of use it as a push through?
Or would we want it as a public event? Like, have her speak at the library?
I think if she's coming, we would try to do multiple things, including a general public event.
I mean, my first reaction was, I like your idea, but my other thought was, after Neighborhood First comes up with its program, then we could do almost like a housing symposium in the spring, where we present Neighborhood First, we talk about everything that's in, we just sort of do a broad-based presentation of everything we've accomplished in the part of building public support for everything that we're doing, and where the timing is and all of that, whether we want it earlier so we get more public input or later because as more of a presentation, but I'm thinking like, let's do a big thing on what's going on, because we have a lot going on that we're gonna wanna be sharing. And then with the creation of if we get the Housing Hub grant from CHIP, we're gonna have a lot of really fun stuff to report.
It would also be interesting for this person to have the results of the data platform, to have them reviewed prior to arriving, to be able to work through.
So it feels like something like, I'm going to say like November-ish might be good timing, because we will have those, the work group will be at that point you described, Brian. I think it would come at a juncture where it could have effect for like Springtown meeting and so forth.
Then be
Yeah.
vested for
Yeah.
those results.
Yeah,
And it might help the Neighborhood First program finish up.
exactly.
Before they have everything wrapped up.
Yeah.
Thinking about.
So please explore for those.
Okay.
I
Will do.
feel really strongly we're gonna have to have some explaining to do before next town meeting.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful visuals.
Yeah, what you been doing with all that money?
Exactly.
On that note,
So I'm going to move that we close the open session to, not to be reopened for an executive session
For purpose.
for the purpose of, hold on, where is it in here?
purpose 6.
To consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property where an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the public body.
And for this, we will take a vote by roll for the motion. So I have a second.
Yeah, yeah.
So we have a second on a roll call. So just announce your name, and then are you?
No.
Yeah, David Iverson, yay.
Rita, I. Charity Grace.
Brooke, aye.
Brian Sullivan.